The Northtown News Magazine is brought to you in part by eVoter. eVoter is proud to be a sponsor of the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine.
Come on, baby, don't you wanna...
Hey there, I am really Marty Levinson. Don't let anybody fool you. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show with the greatest cameraman around, Sonny Hirsch, and your host, Avi Myers.
Thank you, Marty. Avi Myers here, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. Dial us up on the World Wide Web at www.ntnm.org, where in the first 40 days of 2010, over 10,000 shows have been watched. Thank you so much. Way over 110,000 shows, and by the time this thing airs, we're probably at 120,000 or more. So this has been going great. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We're real big on community policing, caps24.org, run by Sonny Hirsch. By the way, Sonny is not here right now. Sonny had to take care of a family matter that came up last minute, but we've got the camera focused. It'll be the same intelligent conversation. We just won't be switching back and forth on cameras. We didn't finish. We have, as most of you know, I'm really big on interviewing judicial people, period. I had 20 different judicial interviews before the election. Not only that, I published to a Chicago, which has judicial ratings. And I just think, there's very little in life that happens that's more important than if you appear before a judge. That could affect the whole rest of your life, your very life itself, your personal freedom, your family, your best friend, who name it. Not to mention marriage, divorce, everything. So I just think the whole process is totally fascinating. We've been fortunate enough, we don't get him that often, to get Michael Strom, who the time he did run for judge, got a ton of highly qualified, by far had the highest qualifications of anybody in the race. This is going to be part 2 on YouTube. If you missed the previous show, go to ntnm.org for the link on YouTube for the show, and we're going to just devote as much time as he needs to letting you guys know about the judicial process. So, where were we last week when we were leaving off? Give people a summary.
Yeah, we'd gone over kind of the big picture, the fact that the turnout was much less in 2010, which is not as unexpected as the media seemed to make of it. That pretty much always happens in a non-presidential year. Why one of the races that I looked to for comparison was 2002, the year that Barbara Meyer won the primary, and she's going on to be a very fine judge out of the 9th Sub-Circuit. And I think at least in our sub-circuit, the vote totals weren't that far off between 2002 and 2010. 2002, of course, was a non-presidential year as well. If I remember the totals, I've got them written down, but why even look? It was like 39,000 and change that voted in the 9th Sub-Circuit in 2002, and 37,000 and change that voted in 2010. And I don't remember what the weather was in 2002.
So neither do I. There were 2 races both years? Oh, yeah, there were 2 races both years. That I remember.
Well, 2002, it was 2 years before I ran.
Well, 2002 I remember specifically because there was jockeying, because Barbara Meyer was supposed to file in one race, another guy was supposed to file in a different race, and the other guy...
Jack Catrone?
Actually, Jack Catrone was in that race, but that's not who I'm talking about. But basically, the other guy got hurt. Let's put it that way. There is, believe it or not, a little bit of politics, like a lot, involved in some of these judicial things. I have to tell people, there were days. I spent basically the last 4 to 6 weeks before Jewish Chicago really concentrating on the election and almost nothing else. There were days when I would spend the first 4 to 5 or 6 hours of my working days talking to people specifically about the 9th judicial race, the people that were running in the race, the people that were involved in politics in the race. It was unbelievable. I could probably write a book just on that subject. But you know what? Michael will give you information on a level that's all different than mine, because he takes the Bill James, which for those of you who don't know, is a very statistical approach to the game. I'll speak more to people. Like I actually found out what some people said after their judicial interviews, to the other people in the interviews and stuff. whatever you see on the show, I talk to people a lot more than just what's on the show. And actually, some of the best conversations, unfortunately, you don't always get to see on the show, but at least it gives me enough background to try to steer you guys in an honest direction when we do speak on the show. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you, or I'm going to have to do 3 shows.
Well, one of the things that we were talking about last time is what would be the effect of low turnout or lower turnout on these races, because in theory, there's 2 things that we hear, and they run into conflict if this doesn't pan out. One of them is, well, you got to have party backing. If you don't have party backing, you're just kidding yourself. You know, you're just you're throwing your money down a rat hole. Okay, if the party backing is going to mean anything, then in a lower turnout election, why those guys really ought to, and female candidates as well, should definitely win more. I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing about the same amount of success this year, 2010, as there was in 2008. I think the numbers that we discussed, although I had a little trouble counting last show, was 6 of 11 slated candidates, if we're counting Democratic Party of Evanston as constituting slating in the 9th Subcircuit, then 6 of 11
Well, actually, the
candidates.
49th Ward did go along with the People's Socialist Republic of Evanston, and the Democratic Party of Evanston, DPOE, Commissar Politburo Jeff Schoenberg. I like Jeff sometimes, but yeah.
Notice that I'm not agreeing with anything that Avi says when he talks like this.
Nor should he.
I listen and nod.
But the fact is, between the 49th Ward and between the Evanston Democratic Party, I mean, that's pretty much like 50.1%. That is official slating as far as I'm concerned.
And yet, that's not what the numbers say.
Oh, that's
we'll
not. They
that.
don't constitute. Oh, so you know what? I want to hear. Evanston, I heard, was 35%, but you'll tell me if I'm wrong.
Oh, Avi, my goodness.
Oh, I have
as
to,
much work as you do on this, and you don't even know the numbers. Shame on you.
Educate me. Educate me.
And that's, by the way, one of Avi's favorite expressions. Shame on you, with the raised shaken fist. Anyway.
And shame on me.
So there you go. So I'm not seeing the difference in turnout at either the county, the full county level. Well, there weren't very many sub-circuit races where you could actually talk about slating, although there were some. And by the way, thank you very much to Jack Lehane for the information he pulls together on his blog, for what it's worth.
Great blog.
It gets easier for those of us who are hungry for data and don't know anything other than the numbers to at least have the information on who's backing who, and a wealth of information. Thanks very much, Jack. Anywho, I looked also at individual township or ward organizations that were at least declared or supposedly backing a candidate to see how those folks did. I noticed the most amazing thing in the 11th Sub-Circuit race, in which Maine Township and Oak Park were backing Steve Fruth, and God bless him, Steve Fruth is a heck of a guy. He was a good, qualified candidate. He did not prevail in that race. But how did that township or committeeman stuff work out for Steve? In Maine Township, he got 7% of the vote. In Oak Park, 18.7%. And the soon-to-be Judge Collins, not favored by those township committeemen, 26.6 in Maine, 27.6 in Oak Park. So I'm not seeing a lot of bang for, I'm not going to say bang for the buck, because I know that Steve wouldn't have paid for it, but if he did, it was not money well spent. Some of the other races where there were declared supporters, let me see if I have these. The 15th Sub-Circuit, there was a wealth of support in the Lipinski race for Lindsey Jones, and since it seems like every politician in the district was supporting Lindsey Jones, it apparently didn't do one bit of harm. It was a very convincing win for Jones. I think in terms of the sub-circuit races, I couldn't find too much, even on Jack's blog, for that. We talked about the county-wide races. I thought I might get into a little bit more detail on how the organization did in some of the higher profile appellate court races and some of the other county-wide circuit court races. Now, one of the things we have here, there were 3 candidates that were slated by the Democratic organization for the appellate court. Judge James Epstein, who is a wonderful person, wonderful judge.
Lots of highly qualified.
He was successful in his race, and we wish him all the best. Good to see. Judge Hill Veal was endorsed by the organization. I'm less familiar with Judge Hill Veal because she sits in a different division than I generally practice in. So my lack of saying anything should not be interpreted as contempt. I'm just not as familiar with that particular.
She got a
judge.
lot of non-qualifieds, didn't she?
I don't. She might have. I'm not sure. We can take a look at that.
Okay.
The third judge was Sebastian Patty. Now these are three disparate ethnic.
Actually, him
types.
I know a bit. He's an interesting character, very friendly guy.
He is. Sebastian Patty, him I do know a bit, and he's a wonderful fellow, a wonderful judge. He was, I believe, one of the first appointed and then subsequently elected judges who was embraced by the gay and lesbian community as a gay and lesbian candidate. I hesitate a little bit to talk this way because he really doesn't.
He doesn't
put
push
himself
that
out
at
there.
all. He doesn't push that at
There are
all.
other candidates,
I
particularly
mean,
more
it's
recently.
true, but he doesn't hide it. It's out there.
Yeah, he's not ashamed of it. He's not afraid of it. He's proud of who he is. But you won't see it on his website. I've never seen it in his literature. In fact, one of his races had a great sports motif to it, which I tried to steal as much as I could.
Yeah.
He did it better than I did, though, because he won and I didn't. But his thing was not just another bench warmer, where Judge Patty was on basketball bench. He's got a robe on. Everybody else has a basketball jersey. It's a lot of fun.
So let's get to the results and stuff here, because I'm afraid we're going to run out of time on a second show.
Ouch. I guess it's a mini series.
We have 18 minutes here.
I'll get you home.
Okay.
The appellate court races, pretty big spread in the vote totals for those three folks. Judge Epstein got 26.9% of the vote, and in his race that was enough to win. In another race, maybe not so much.
He had 4 opponents.
He did, and the breakdown was really very fortuitous. This is like the second miracle victory countywide for a Jewish candidate, Mike Hyman being the other, who also had a really fortuitous even split.
Well, one thing I can tell you from talking to the people in his campaign is that when they didn't see the numbers going well, they started doing television ads. So that became a factor that not all judges get involved in.
Well, that's fine. On the other hand, I'm familiar with another friend of mine, Jamie Shapiro, who's also a sitting judge, who spent probably more money on television in a sub-circuit race than Judge Epstein did countywide, and it didn't work for him.
It didn't work. I know him, and he's a good guy.
He is. He's also past president of Decalogue.
Right.
The spread in these vote totals on the appellate court, which again it's the top of the judicial ballot, is kind of amazing. 26.9 for Jim Epstein, 19.9 for Judge Hill Veal, and 15.9 for Judge Patty. If the organization backing is that meaningful, it's surprising to see that much of a spread. So I thought, let me take a look at some of the really gold-plated reputation organization wards to see what the totals were.
Okay.
And what I decided to do, because I am such a stat geek, that I took 3 candidates who would not have an ethnic advantage in those wards, and see how they did. These are all slated candidates. Judge Hill Veal was one. Judge William Hooks, who was exceptionally
Lots of highly qualified.
exceptionally qualified and did exceptionally well in his race, notwithstanding the snub by Jewish Chicago, who declined to endorse the highest rated candidate since Bill Kunkel.
By the way, that's true, and I have to say that because I don't pick him myself. Now he and one other person spoke up for Hooks, okay, and 6 other people spoke up for Bill Raines, and I just report dutifully what my experts tell me. And by the way, I saw 1 million Raines signs around here in Jewish neighborhoods, which probably explains that. And I only saw 1 or 2 Hook signs, but I'm sure the rest of the county was quite a bit different, obviously from the vote totals.
So the third candidate that I looked at was Judge Epstein. So we're talking about 2 African-American candidates and a Jewish candidate in wards 11, 13, 19, And just to see if there's any variance in it, the 50th Ward, which, as I understand it, has a great number of Jews.
Yes, very much so.
So let's take a look. 11th Ward, Bridgeport, bell cow for the Democratic organization.
Yeah.
Judge Hill Veal got 396 votes in the 11th Ward. That's
Whoa.
amazing. Judge Tom Hogan, who is another fine fellow who I actually practice in front of regularly.
He was on the show, and I like Hogan very much.
Judge Hogan got 3,195 votes in the 11th
Yeah,
Ward.
and he was endorsed by our panel, and if I'm not mistaken, and well, he's also an Irish name in an Irish neighborhood.
Right, so you would expect that he'd do pretty well. And again, that's one of the reasons why I was focusing on these other candidates. I've just put Hogan in there for these to see, okay, how'd the Irish guy do in those races. Judge Hooks, 11th Ward, 3,502 votes, more than Judge Hogan. Jim Epstein, 2,698 votes in the 11th Ward. What's up with that, Avi? I mean, I'm not on the inside. I have no idea what's going on. But
I read Abden Palish's article, and it was sort of like, and I can't say this specifically about Judge Pamela Hill Veal, but the fact is there were certain times when it sounded like, okay, we need this ethnicity, therefore we're throwing this one in there. And some was more enthusiastic than others.
Well, okay, that's fine, but on the same
I can't
slate,
tell you I know where Hill Veal's support comes from. I don't.
On the same slate, you have Bill Hooks, who is the same ethnicity as Judge Hill Veal, and awfully different result.
Well, for one thing, I think there's a big difference in the qualification. I know that he's highly qualified. I know that she definitely had her share of not qualifieds. And the fact is, sometimes if that political organization cares more about you, it means a lot.
Which is what I've heard from people that I know of who were supported but not supported.
Well, also, isn't Hook, right, exactly, and that happens often. Also, Hooks, I know, is from the south side, I think the south suburbs. I don't know if Phil Veal's from northern suburbs. I don't know if that made a difference, but the fact is, whether an organization likes you, I've heard enough committeemen say, yeah, we're endorsing him, and we're going to...
These things happen. 13th Ward, another excellent ward in the great south side of Chicago. 588 votes for Judge Hill Veal. 4,349 votes for Judge Hooks. 3,071 votes for Jim Epstein. 19th Ward, the numbers are higher, but not proportionally better, because there's a ton of votes in the 19th Ward. It's an immense vote total ward. 1,725 votes for Judge Hill Veal, which sounds good until you look at Judge Hooks' total, over 7,000 votes.
Wow.
And Judge Epstein in the same ward, 2,323 votes. I'm not sure that I even understand that spread, but there you have it. And by the way, I decided to come up with another marker to compare how folks were doing in the 50th Ward, which is another friend of mine, Yehuda Leibovitz.
Right.
Yehuda Leibovitz got 2,326 votes in the 50th Ward, which should be a great base of strength for Yehuda in his campaign.
He was not endorsed by the 50th Ward organization.
That having been said, I imagine that he got tremendous support from the Orthodox community, because Yehuda would have been the only Orthodox in the race.
There's no question about it.
So Judge Hooks only
The 50th Ward, by the way, did not endorse in that race.
That's what
They
I understand.
skipped any difficult decision.
Judge Hooks got just about 75 votes, maybe 70 votes less than Yehuda Leibovitz in the 50th Ward, notwithstanding no particular advantage for Judge Hooks being African American in this ward. So you see a lot of spread in how some of these races go in terms of organizations' slated candidates. Although, I don't want to kid anybody. If you're winning 6 of 11 races in any way that you're skewing the numbers, that's pretty good. You've got races with 4, 6, 8. Some of these sub-circuit races are not included in the totals, but I think the 11th Ward or 11th sub-circuit had, 10, 12 candidates in it? So, but let's talk about what Avi really wants to talk about, which is the 9th sub-circuit.
Yes, please.
It's a fascinating story. Now, as you know, Avi, particularly with the 50th Ward being not so much active this time around, The dominant political organization in the Ninth Sub-Circuit is the Democratic Party of Evanston, and Jan Schakowsky's personal endorsement is an awfully good thing to have.
It's the best thing to have because people don't realize that she really is the closest thing we have to being the North Shore political boss, if she's not. She has influence on every single ward organization within her congressional district.
Well, this time there were 2 races in the Ninth Sub-Circuit, and there were DPOE candidates endorsed in both races. In one of them, it was Abby Romanek, who's been really doing a lot of legwork and groundwork for the last 4 years. She's put in a lot of time on this race. It isn't like she just dropped in from outer space and was going to ride an endorsement. She's worked very hard for it. And Steve Bernstein, who's been a very prominent figure in Evanston for many years as alderman of, I think, was the 4th Ward.
He resigned as alderman specifically to run for judge, and his wife, former head of the Republican Party, or head of the DPOE, maybe both. Jeannie Cleveland Bernstein is a judge herself, who was a former winner of the 9th Congressional Sub-Circuit.
Judicial Sub-Circuit.
Thank you.
I'm relatively aware of that because she beat the stuffing out of me in that race. But,
That was a shame.
You know what? God bless her. She's been a good friend to me since the election, and I'm grateful for the friendship of so many people that we're talking about today. It's amazing how
Yeah, that's how we met
and
and got to be friendly.
Yeah, it is. And you didn't endorse me in that one either.
No, I didn't.
Go figure. Anyway, the Ninth Sub-Circuit,
Yeah.
the dominant population areas are Evanston Township, Niles Township, and the city of Chicago. And in both, the amazing thing here is how parallel these 2 races were, because you had candidates that were almost one-for-one equivalents. You have the 2 Democratic Party of Evanston candidates. You had 2 candidates who were former elected officials in Niles Township. Yehuda Leibovitz, who had been elected at a number of positions in Lincolnwood, and Mike Bender, who had many positions within Village of Skokie.
Right.
And then the third large sector is the city of Chicago, which tends to skew a bit because the 49th and 50th wards are so different that it's difficult to deliver. What you really need is, a lead, a gap to get some space between you and the other folks. So there's a lot of folks in the city, but it tends to be less cohesive than those 2 other areas. So, and then in both of these races, you had people who were not supported by any of the traditional political organizations, had exceptionally high ratings. In the Otaka vacancy, running against Abby Fishman-Romanek, Yehuda Leibovitz, you had Judge Gary Cull, who was not only not supported by DPOA, but not even one of the top 2 or 3 ethnicities for this district. So a lot of folks, such as Jewish Chicago, I believe, wrote him off completely.
Nobody picked him. You know what? He was I did say in Jewish Chicago he was highly rated, but nobody picked him.
That's about all you said. It was about one sentence on Judge Cull, who, as we're taping this, holds a 40-vote lead in that race.
I thought it was 51, but that's okay.
It'll be different by the time it's over.
That's true. There's still some absentee coming in.
So you have those 3 candidates, and you have the mirror image in the other race. The Abby's equivalent is Steve Bernstein, from former alderman in Evanston. The equivalent to Yehuda Leibovitz, as I said, Mike Bender, and Judge Cull's equivalent would be Mary True, a Rogers Parker, who had the best evaluations by far in her race, as did Judge Cull in his.
Yeah, Cull had 5 highly qualified. She had 4.
It's awfully good. So I decided the thing that was amazing immediately was that Abby Romanek didn't win her race, because everybody expected that was going to happen. She was the sole female in a field of 4. She was supported by Jan Schakowsky and the Democratic Party of Evanston. Very puzzling. And then the next thing that I wanted to find out was, where did Judge Cull get all those votes? Because certainly Abby was going to carry Evanston.
Well, one thing I will tell you that because we don't always talk, I do know that 8 of the 9 Evanston aldermen went against Jan and the DPOE and endorsed Cull, as did Mayor Tisdale, the new mayor of Evanston.
I noticed that too.
Okay.
And I'm not sure what that meant in the grand scheme of things. But
I think they know about the ethics stuff. That's my own personal opinion.
Personally, I think you've made a bigger deal out of that than the legal community in general makes out of it.
You're right. And, I hate to say it, the legal community got me all hot and bothered about it, and then nobody in the legal community did anything about it, which makes me wonder what the hell's with the legal community.
I mean, and to be fair, if we're bringing this up, we should mention what it is, to be fair to Abby. It came out, and I believe you discussed it on the show.
Sure.
That Abby...
she admitted to it.
Yeah, she had to leave the governmental position because there was some use of a fax machine for a congressional candidate.
Yeah, and she said email for Dan Seals from Lisa Madigan's office, which was strictly against the rules, which other people in Lisa Madigan's office have told me. So, and she did, in fairness to her, she did admit to it on the show.
And in
3.5 minutes. So let's.
In further fairness to her, at a private law firm, nobody would think anything of it. But okay, so where did Judge Cull get all these votes? It couldn't have been from Evanston, except that when we got the totals in, Judge Cull not only won Evanston, he won it by an amazing commanding figure. Judge Cull in the Otaka vacancy, I couldn't believe it when I looked at this. 46% of the vote in Evanston to 31% for Abby Fishman-Romanek, a plurality of over 1,500 vote lead coming out of Evanston. Go figure. What we saw was Judge Cull ran strong really throughout the district, but really his strength was in Evanston. He got, in fact, more than half of his total votes in the race were in Evanston Township. He was fourth in the city of Chicago and managed to not get annihilated, which was good because you get your lead in one place and you try to hang tough and be competitive in the other. He did that. One of the things that I then looked to is, all right, obviously these two races went differently. Abby Romanek was unsuccessful, Steve Bernstein was. So one of the things I thought was, what happened to Judge Cull's votes in the other race? Now you would think if people are really mavens and they're looking at these ratings, well, the Cull people are going to go right over and vote for Mary True in the other race. Not so much.
No, not at all.
I mean, some of them did.
She got a decent number of votes.
She did well, but I actually went through it precinct by precinct in Evanston, and she consistently got much less, significant, but much less the vote than Judge Cull did. And to Avi's consternation, consistently, every precinct practically, a percentage of Judge Cull's vote went to Steve Bernstein.
Yeah, hometown advantage, hometown boy.
Well, you would think that the DPOE mantle would have helped Abby do the same.
But you know what? He really was part of their structure the whole time, and she wasn't anywhere near the same part of the structure. You got a minute, by the way.
Okay, good, because it's time for the capper. The bottom line in all of these races, and we saw the same with Aurelia Paczynski in her appellate court races. You can talk about all these other factors, but the bottom line is people don't really know any of these candidates for real. They can have slating, they can have the Tribune, they can have this, that, and the other thing, but there's nothing like somebody that the voters actually know. The voters didn't care what Aurelia Paczynski's relative ratings were. She won a commanding victory. Steve Bernstein, everybody in Evanston Township knows who Steve Bernstein is, and the contiguous areas too. They were comfortable with him, and nothing else mattered.
Wow. Anyway, that was terrific. I want to thank you so much, Michael Strom, for that really insightful, incredible analysis. I'll be watching this over and over and over. I know Jack Lahane will be posting this. I want to thank my entire technical crew, Sonny Hirsch, who had to attend to a family matter. That's why just the one shot on the film. Thank you, Marty. Thank you for tuning in. Website, ntnm.org. This is one of the most insightful. I learned a lot from this. And thank you so much, Michael.
Avi, we learn a lot from you every week.
I learn a lot from you. And Michael Strom really knows his stuff when it comes to judges. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everybody.